Okay, we're going to be talking about schema theory, or just schemas in general. So schemas are frameworks, mental frameworks that we have for organizing information about the world, the people around us, events that are happening, and generally just actions in the world. And the reason we have schemas and have these mental processes in our head is because schemas help us make sense of the world and therefore help inform us of the behavior that we need to exhibit to be socially acceptable. Schema processing is usually automatic and it's quite non-conscious. So if we remember from dual processing theory, schemas really tend to fit under system 1 thinking because it's quite involuntary. So there are two types of schema processing because the world influences the schemas that we build in our head, but our schemas also help influence the perception of the world around us. So the first one we have is bottom-up processing. Bottom-up processing is when we see something new in the world and our schema is based on the experiences. So we look at something and we form a new schema based on what we're seeing. Whereas top-down processing is seeing something but then knowing we already have a schema on it, and then therefore that schema changes your perception about that topic or experience that you are having. So schemas allow us to really predict what to expect in unfamiliar situations. They also help us interpret new information and fill in knowledge gaps when we just don't know certain things. So schemas lead to two types of outcomes, congruency and incongruency. Congruency is when we notice information more because we fit that information into a pre-existing schema, whereas incongruency is ignoring information that doesn't necessarily fit into our schemas, which can lead to confirmation bias because we tend to then have a very narrow view of just things that we've already predetermined to be inside our set scripts. So the types of schemas we can have, we keep schemas around the people around us. So maybe your teachers look a certain way, or when someone says something, you know what kind of a reaction you're gonna get. You know when your coach is mad at you, what type of behavior they're going to exhibit. Those are the types of schemas that we can form from prior experiences. Other types of schemas can form from events, and these are like, we associate certain things, like we associate success with certain types of people or appearances, even though these are technically stereotypes. Maybe the event is very smart casual and we have certain attires that we know you should be wearing, and nobody is directly telling you these things, but we've built these based on past experiences and exposure to these events. We can also have social schemas, like when you think of a wedding, you think of white colors. When you think of birthday, you think of cake and presents. It's just something that is always there, and there's quite always a set script for it. Yeah, so these can lead to stereotypes that can be negative, but not all schemas hold these prejudiced views. So one theory that kind of looks into schemas, but really focuses on cultural schemas and information encoding based on memory is Bartlett's War of the Ghost study in 1932, where he wanted to see how individuals' cultural schemas would lead to certain distortions in the retelling of a story and see if that would directly affect their memory. So what this was a telephone style game where he read aloud a passage, and it was a Native American passage, to British participants who had different cultural schemas to that story. And then because it was a longitudinal study, the data was collected over a period of time. He made the participants then recount the stories after maybe like a week or a month or a year to see how results differ. And what he found was that the common distortions could be put into assimilation, leveling, and sharpening. So assimilation is when the participants actually changed the story and they distorted certain things to fit with their own cultural schemas. For example, the original passage had a line that was describing a kayak, but the participants, because they were British, they changed that instead to a boat, which wasn't the original story, but it aligned with their own cultural schemas. The second one is leveling, and leveling is when, because you don't exactly remember where like the entirety of the passage, and this one is more related to memory distortions. You tend to cut out certain parts of it to try and keep the essence of the story together instead of getting everything there. And then the third one is sharpening. Sharpening is like adding or enhancing the story with little details that actually weren't in the original War of the Ghost story, but the participants used their own pre-existing schemas to fill in the blanks and add in new information that wasn't there. So the critiques of schemas and schema theory in general is that it's quite a non-quantifiable thing. We can't actually see the mental frameworks of what schemas are inside a person's head, so there's no way to quantifiably measure the amount of schemas or the type of schema that someone is actually experiencing. And the other thing is that most of the studies done on schema have been negative things that lead to distortions or inaccuracies, but we don't really account for the things that schemas do allow us to do. We don't really do studies on whether or not schemas influence the way that we are able to behave in a correct, acceptable social manner. So applications of schemas, we can really just think about any sort of a social setting where you're going into and you have a pre-existing schema against. For example, a lot of kids nowadays watch TV shows, so even though maybe they've never been in a workplace setting before, but they've watched a movie or a TV show, or their parents go to the workplace, they'll form these pre-existing schemas, and they have a very good idea of what the workplace looks like, even though they've never been in an office. Yeah, so that's everything for schemas.